Jake Miller wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the broken mining equipment in front of him. The asteroid belt was a dangerous place to work alone, but it paid well. Most people thought he was crazy for doing salvage work out here by himself. Maybe they were right. But Jake needed the money, and he was good at fixing things that other people gave up on. His small ship drifted slowly through the floating rocks. The ship was not pretty to look at. It had been patched and repaired so many times that hardly any of the original metal was still showing. But it was reliable, and that was what mattered out here. Jake had named it the Lucky Strike, though most days he did not feel very lucky. The radio crackled with static. Jake was about to turn it off when something caught his attention. His sensors were picking up something big. Something that should not be there. He frowned and checked the readings again. The computer was showing an energy signature unlike anything he had ever seen before. Jake pushed the throttle forward and headed toward the signal. As he got closer, his mouth fell open. Floating in the darkness ahead of him was the biggest spaceship he had ever seen. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. The hull looked like it was made of crystal, but it was cracked and broken. Strange purple light was leaking out of the cracks like blood from a wound. The ship was easily the size of a small city. Jake had never seen anything like it in all his years of space travel. It was not human-made, that was for sure. The design was too elegant, too perfect. Even damaged as it was, the ship looked like a work of art. Jake tried to contact the ship on all frequencies, but there was no response. His sensors showed that the vessel was losing atmosphere fast. Whatever had happened to it, the ship was dying. As he watched, small objects began separating from the main hull. Escape pods. Someone was still alive in there. Most of the pods were heading toward a large asteroid that looked stable enough to land on. But one pod was spinning wildly out of control. Jake could see that its trajectory was wrong. Instead of heading for safety, it was tumbling straight toward a field of sharp, jagged rocks. If it hit those asteroids, whoever was inside would be crushed. Jake did not think about it. He just acted. He pushed his engines to full power and raced after the spinning pod. The Lucky Strike was not built for speed, but Jake knew how to get the most out of his old ship. He had to reach the pod before it hit the rocks. There were maybe 2 minutes before impact. The asteroid field was dangerous even for someone who knew how to fly. The rocks were packed close together, and they were constantly moving. One wrong move and Jake would be smashed, just like the escape pod he was trying to save. But he had been flying through asteroid fields for years. His hands moved over the controls without thinking, dodging and weaving between the floating stones. The escape pod was getting closer to the rocks. Jake could see that it was unlike any human escape pod he had ever seen. It was smooth and curved, made of the same crystal-like material as the big ship. There were no windows that he could see, but lights were flashing along its surface in patterns that meant nothing to him. Jake reached out with his ship's magnetic grappler, but the pod was spinning too fast. He tried once, twice, but could not get a solid lock. The rocks were getting closer. In 30 seconds, the pod would be destroyed. Jake took a deep breath and did something that went against all his training. He moved his ship directly into the path of the spinning pod. If he miscalculated, both ships would be destroyed. But it was the only way to save whoever was inside. The pod slammed into the Lucky Strike's hull with a loud crash that shook the entire ship. Alarms started going off, and Jake could smell smoke from damaged systems. But the magnetic grappler finally had something solid to grab onto. He pulled the pod against his ship's hull and held it there as they both drifted away from the dangerous rocks. Jake sat back in his pilot's chair and tried to catch his breath. His ship had taken damage, but they were alive. He and whoever was in that escape pod. He had done it with maybe 10 seconds to spare. Now came the hard part. Jake had to figure out what to do with his unexpected passenger. The escape pod was clearly not human technology. That meant he had just rescued an alien. In all his years of space travel, Jake had never met anyone who was not human. There were stories and rumors, but most people thought they were just tales to scare children. Jake carefully maneuvered the pod into his small cargo bay. The Lucky Strike was not designed to carry passengers, but he had a small medical bay that might work. As the cargo bay doors closed and atmosphere filled the space, Jake wondered what he was getting himself into. The escape pod was beautiful up close. The surface was smooth as glass but warm to the touch. Jake could not figure out how to open it. There were no handles or buttons that he could see. He was starting to worry that whoever was inside might be running out of air when the pod suddenly split open like a flower blooming. What emerged was like nothing Jake had ever imagined. The alien was tall, much taller than any human. Its skin was pale and translucent, like looking through frosted glass. Instead of 2 arms like a human, it had 4, and they moved with an elegant grace that made Jake feel clumsy just watching. The alien's face was beautiful in a way that was both familiar and completely foreign. The features were delicate and refined, with large eyes that seemed to glow with their own inner light. When those eyes focused on Jake, he felt like he was being examined by something far more intelligent than himself. The alien tried to stand but collapsed immediately. Jake rushed forward to help, not sure if he should touch the creature or not, but the alien was clearly injured and in pain. Jake carefully helped it to the medical bay, surprised by how light the alien felt despite being so tall. As Jake worked to make the alien comfortable, he noticed that its skin was changing colors. Patterns of blue and silver rippled across the surface like waves on water. Jake had no idea what it meant, but he hoped it was not a sign that the alien was dying. The alien's eyes never left Jake's face. There was intelligence there, and something else. Surprise, maybe, as if the alien had not expected to be rescued by someone like him. Jake wondered what the alien saw when it looked at him. Probably just another primitive human, rough and simple compared to the elegant creature he had saved. Jake tried to use his ship's medical scanner on the alien, but the readings made no sense. The alien's biology was completely different from anything in the computer's database. All Jake could do was make sure the creature was comfortable and hope that it would recover on its own. As he worked, Jake could not stop thinking about the huge ship he had seen. If this alien was important enough to have its own escape pod, then maybe others would come looking for it. Jake was not sure if that was a good thing or not. He had heard stories about what happened when humans met aliens for the first time. Most of those stories did not end well, but that was a problem for later. Right now, Jake had an injured alien in his medical bay and a damaged ship in the middle of nowhere. He needed to get them both to safety. The nearest space station was 3 days away if his engines held together. Jake hoped that would be enough time to figure out what to do next. He took one last look at the sleeping alien and headed back to the bridge. Whatever happened next, Jake knew that his life had just changed forever. He had gone from being a simple salvage operator to being possibly the first human to make contact with an alien species. He just hoped he would live long enough to tell someone about it. Jake woke up to the sound of alarms. He had been sleeping in the pilot's chair for the past 6 hours while his ship drifted toward the nearest space station. The medical bay sensors were going crazy. His alien passenger was awake. Jake grabbed his tool belt and headed to the medical bay. He did not know what to expect. The alien might be scared or angry or ready to attack. Jake had heard too many stories about first contact situations that went wrong. But when he opened the door, he found the alien sitting calmly on the medical bed, studying the room around it. The alien looked better than it had when Jake first rescued it. The pale skin was no longer changing colors randomly, and those strange glowing eyes seemed more focused. When the alien saw Jake, it made a sound that might have been words, but Jake could not understand any of it. Jake held up his hands to show he meant no harm. The alien watched this gesture carefully, then copied it with all 4 of its arms. The sight was so unexpected that Jake almost smiled. Maybe this would not be as difficult as he thought. Jake pointed to himself and said slowly, "Jake." Then he pointed to the alien and raised his eyebrows in a question. The alien seemed to understand. It pointed to itself and made a complex sound that Jake could not even begin to repeat. The alien tried again, making the sound simpler. It still sounded like music compared to human speech. Jake tried to copy the sound and failed completely. The alien made what might have been a laugh. It pointed to itself again and said something that sounded a little like Lyra. Jake nodded and repeated Lyra. The alien's skin flashed with golden colors that Jake hoped meant approval. Communication was going to be a problem. Jake's ship had a basic translation program, but it was designed for human languages. He activated it anyway and tried to get it to recognize what Lyra was saying. The computer made confused beeping sounds and gave up. Jake tried a different approach. He brought out his tablet and started drawing simple pictures. He drew a stick figure of himself, then pointed to himself. Then he drew a taller figure with 4 arms and pointed to Lyra. The alien watched with interest and took the tablet from Jake's hands. Lyra's drawing was much better than Jake's. The alien drew the huge crystal ship that Jake had seen, then drew it exploding. Then Lyra drew herself in the escape pod, and Jake's ship rescuing her. The pictures told the story clearly. Lyra was thanking him for saving her life. Jake felt embarrassed. He had just done what anyone would do when they saw someone in trouble. He tried to explain this with gestures, but Lyra seemed confused by his reaction. The alien's skin shifted to pale blue colors as it studied Jake's face. Over the next few hours, they developed a simple way to communicate using pictures and gestures. Jake learned that Lyra came from a place far away, that her people were called something that sounded like Zephyrians, and that she was very important to them. Lyra learned that Jake was alone on his ship, that he worked by himself, and that he had rescued her without expecting anything in return. This last point seemed to fascinate Lyra. The alien kept returning to it, drawing pictures and asking questions that Jake could barely understand. Finally, Jake realized what Lyra was trying to ask. She wanted to know why he had risked his life for a complete stranger. Jake thought about how to explain it. In the end, he drew a simple picture of 2 stick figures. One was falling, and the other was reaching out to help. He pointed to the picture, then to himself and Lyra. Then he shrugged as if to say, "What else would I do?" Lyra stared at the drawing for a long time. The alien's skin went through several color changes that Jake was starting to recognize as signs of deep thinking. Finally, Lyra drew her own picture. It showed many figures standing in rows, with one figure at the front giving orders. Then she drew the same figures, but this time they were all walking away from someone who was falling. Jake understood. Lyra was saying that her people would not have helped a stranger the way Jake had helped her. They would have waited for orders or permission, or some kind of official approval. Jake found this hard to believe. How could an advanced alien race survive if they would not help each other? Jake tried to learn more about Lyra's people, but the language barrier was too difficult. Instead, he focused on taking care of his passenger. Lyra did not seem to need much food, but she drank a lot of water. The alien was fascinated by Jake's simple cooking, watching as he prepared basic meals for himself. When Jake offered to share his food, Lyra politely refused. But the alien seemed interested in the coffee maker. Jake made a fresh pot and offered Lyra a cup. The alien smelled it carefully, then took a small sip. Lyra's skin immediately turned bright orange, and she made a sound that was definitely surprise. Jake laughed and took the cup back. Coffee was probably too strong for aliens. But Lyra reached for the cup again and took another sip. This time, her skin turned a warm golden color that Jake was learning meant happiness or pleasure. It seemed that aliens and humans had at least one thing in common. They both liked coffee. As the hours passed, Jake began to notice things about Lyra that surprised him. The alien was clearly intelligent, much more so than Jake himself. But Lyra seemed amazed by the simplest things on Jake's ship. The way the coffee maker worked. The fact that Jake could repair broken equipment with basic tools. The way Jake had organized his small living space to be efficient and comfortable. Jake realized that Lyra came from a world where everything was probably perfect and beautiful, like that crystal ship. His rough, patched-together salvage vessel must seem very primitive. But instead of looking down on Jake's simple life, Lyra seemed genuinely interested in how he managed to survive and work alone in such dangerous conditions. On the second day, Jake's ship detected another vessel approaching. Jake checked his sensors and felt his stomach drop. It was big, much bigger than his little salvage ship, and it was moving fast, heading straight for them. Jake tried to contact the approaching ship, but got no response. He showed Lyra the sensor readings, and the alien's reaction was immediate. Lyra's skin went pale white, then shifted to rapid patterns of silver and blue. The alien was clearly upset about something. Lyra grabbed Jake's tablet and started drawing frantically. She drew the big ship on the sensors, then drew many smaller ships around it. Then she drew herself and Jake, with arrows pointing to them from all the other ships. Jake understood. These were Lyra's people, and they were coming to rescue her. But Lyra's expression suggested that this might not be good news for Jake. The alien kept drawing pictures that showed Jake in danger. Lyra's people might not understand that Jake had rescued her. They might think he had kidnapped her instead. Jake felt a cold fear in his stomach. He was just one human in a small, damaged ship. If Lyra's people decided he was a threat, there was nothing he could do to defend himself. His only weapon was a repair laser that was designed to cut metal, not fight space battles. Jake looked at Lyra and saw the same worry in those glowing eyes. The alien had come to understand Jake over the past 2 days. Lyra knew that Jake was not a threat, but would her people believe that? Or would they destroy Jake's ship first and ask questions later? The approaching ships were getting closer. In a few hours, Jake would have his answer. He just hoped he would live long enough to explain himself. Jake had rescued Lyra from certain death, but now it looked like that rescue might be the death of him. Jake checked his ship's systems one more time. The Lucky Strike was not built for running or fighting, but maybe he could think of something. He had gotten this far by being clever and resourceful. Now he would need all the cleverness he could find. Lyra placed one of her 4 hands on Jake's shoulder. The alien's skin was glowing with soft blue light, and Jake somehow knew that Lyra was trying to tell him that everything would be okay. Jake hoped the alien was right. In a few hours, he would either be rescued or dead. There was no middle ground when it came to first contact with alien species. The alien warships appeared on Jake's sensors like thunderclouds rolling in before a storm. There were 6 of them, each one bigger than anything Jake had ever seen. They moved in perfect formation, their crystal hulls gleaming with deadly purpose. Jake's little salvage ship looked like a toy compared to these giants. Jake tried to contact the lead ship on all frequencies. "This is Jake Miller aboard the salvage vessel Lucky Strike. I have rescued one of your people from an escape pod. She is safe and unharmed. Please respond." For a long moment there was only static. Then Jake's radio exploded with angry voices speaking in the same musical language that Lyra used. Jake could not understand the words, but the tone was clear. They were not happy. Lyra rushed to the radio and began speaking rapidly in her own language. Her skin was flashing bright red and gold patterns that Jake had never seen before. The alien was clearly trying to explain something, but the voices on the radio only got angrier. Suddenly, the lead warship fired a warning shot. A beam of pure energy passed so close to Jake's ship that it scorched the hull. Jake's hands flew to his controls, but he knew it was hopeless. His ship was not built for fighting. If these aliens wanted to destroy him, there was nothing he could do to stop them. "Warning, human vessel," came a cold voice over the radio. This alien was speaking in broken but understandable human language. "You have taken our queen. Surrender now or be destroyed." Queen. Jake looked at Lyra with new understanding. No wonder she had seemed so important. He had rescued an alien queen, without even knowing it. And now her people thought he had kidnapped her. "I did not take her," Jake broadcast back. "I saved her. Her escape pod was going to crash into the asteroids. I rescued her." "Lies," the alien voice replied. "You will release our queen immediately and prepare to be boarded." Jake felt panic rising in his chest. He had heard stories about what happened to humans who were captured by aliens. Most of those stories did not end well. But before he could respond, Lyra pushed past him to the radio. The queen spoke in her own language, her voice firm and commanding. Jake could not understand the words, but he could hear the authority in her tone. This was not a frightened prisoner speaking. This was a ruler giving orders to her subjects. The radio fell silent. Jake could imagine the confusion on the alien warships. They had expected to find their queen held captive by a savage human. Instead, they were hearing her defend that same human. A new voice came over the radio, deeper and more authoritative than the first. "My queen, this is General Vex. We have come to rescue you. Are you injured? Has this human harmed you in any way? Lyra responded quickly, her skin flashing with golden colors. Jake was starting to understand that gold meant she was happy or pleased about something. The Queen was telling her people that Jake had treated her well. General Vex, Lyra said, switching to the broken human language. This human saved my life. His name is Jake Miller. He is to be treated with honor. My Queen, General Vex replied carefully. We must follow proper protocol. You will be transferred to our ship immediately. We will deal with the human afterward. Jake did not like the sound of that. Deal with me how? He asked. There was a pause. That will be decided later, General Vex said. Jake felt his mouth go dry. He was about to be captured by aliens who might decide he was too dangerous to live. Even if Lyra spoke for him, there was no guarantee that her people would listen. Jake had seen enough human politics to know that even queens sometimes had to bow to pressure from their advisors. But then another voice cut through the radio chatter. This one was different from the others. Where General Vex sounded like a soldier, this new voice carried absolute authority. It was deep and commanding, with an edge of anger that made Jake's skin crawl. Lyra, the voice said, this is your husband. You will return to my ship immediately. We will discuss this human situation in private. Husband. Jake realized he was now caught in the middle of an alien royal family dispute. The king sounded like he was barely controlling his anger. Jake could only imagine what the alien ruler was thinking. His wife had been rescued by a primitive human, and now she was defending that human against her own people. Lyra's skin changed colors rapidly, cycling through patterns that Jake had never seen before. The Queen was clearly upset about something. She spoke to her husband in their own language, but Jake could hear the tension in her voice. English, my wife, the king said coldly, so our human guest can understand what we are discussing. Jake Miller saved my life, Lyra said firmly. When my guards failed, when my ships were destroyed, this human acted. He risked his own life to rescue me from certain death. And now he holds you prisoner on his primitive vessel, the king replied. How convenient for him. Jake had heard enough. I am not holding anyone prisoner, he said into the radio. Your queen is free to leave any time she wants. I was taking her to the nearest space station so she could contact her people. I did not even know she was a queen until 5 minutes ago. You expect us to believe? The king said. That you rescued our queen out of simple kindness? That you want nothing in return? Jake was getting angry now. He had risked his life to save Lyra, and now he was being accused of kidnapping her. That is exactly what I expect you to believe, because it is the truth. I saw someone in trouble and I helped. That is what decent people do. The radio fell silent again. Jake could imagine the conversations happening on the alien ships. They were probably trying to figure out if he was telling the truth or if this was some kind of elaborate human trick. Lyra turned to Jake, her eyes wide with what might have been surprise or admiration. You spoke to the king, she said softly. My people never speak to the king like that. Maybe they should, Jake replied. If he is going to accuse me of crimes I did not commit, I am going to defend myself. Before Lyra could respond, the radio crackled to life again. Human vessel, General Vex announced. You will prepare to be boarded. Our queen will be transferred to the royal flagship. You will remain as our guest until this matter is resolved. Guest. Jake knew what that meant. He was going to be a prisoner no matter what they called it, but he also knew that running was not an option. The alien warships could destroy his little salvage vessel without breaking a sweat. Understood, Jake said into the radio. Then he turned to Lyra. I guess this is goodbye, Your Majesty. I hope your people treat you better than they are treating me. Lyra's skin flashed with colors that Jake had never seen before. The Queen looked like she wanted to say something, but before she could speak, the sound of docking clamps echoed through Jake's ship. The aliens were boarding. Jake straightened his shoulders and prepared to meet his fate. He had done the right thing by rescuing Lyra. If that got him killed, at least he would die knowing he had acted with honor. Sometimes that was all a person could do. The airlock opened and Jake got his first look at alien soldiers. They were tall like Lyra, but their skin was darker and their movements were more aggressive. They carried weapons that looked like they could disintegrate a human with. "One-shot Jake Miller," the lead soldier said in accented English. "You will come with us. The king wishes to speak with you." Jake nodded and followed the soldiers toward the airlock. As he walked, he caught a glimpse of Lyra being escorted by a different group of aliens. The queen looked back at him once, her glowing eyes filled with an expression that Jake could not read. Then the airlock closed and Jake found himself aboard an alien warship, heading toward a meeting with a king who might decide to have him executed. Jake had wanted adventure in his life, but this was more than he had bargained for. The alien flagship was like nothing Jake had ever imagined. The corridors were made of the same crystal material as the hull, but they glowed with soft light that seemed to come from within the walls themselves. Everything was smooth and perfect, without a single rough edge or visible repair. It made Jake feel even more out of place than he already did. The alien soldiers led him through hallways that were far too tall for humans. Jake had to crane his neck to see the ceiling, which was decorated with patterns of light that shifted and moved like living things. Other aliens stopped to stare at him as he passed. Jake was probably the first human most of them had ever seen. Finally, they reached a massive door that opened without any sound. Jake found himself in what could only be the throne room. The chamber was enormous, with a high ceiling that disappeared into shadow. At the far end, two figures sat on chairs that looked like they were carved from single pieces of crystal. King Theron was even more impressive than Jake had expected. The alien ruler was taller than Lyra, with broader shoulders and skin that seemed to shift between silver and gold. His forearms moved in slow, deliberate gestures that spoke of absolute authority. When those glowing eyes fixed on Jake, the human felt like he was being examined by a predator. Queen Lyra sat beside her husband, but Jake could see the tension between them. The queen's skin was flashing with rapid color changes that Jake was learning meant stress or anger. She was not happy about this situation. Around the throne room, dozens of other aliens stood in perfect rows. These must be the royal court, Jake realized. They all wore flowing robes and had skin that glowed with different patterns. But every single one of them was staring at Jake like he was some kind of dangerous animal. "So," King Theron said, his voice echoing in the vast chamber, "you are the human who claims to have rescued my wife." Jake stood straighter. He was not going to be intimidated, even by an alien king. "I did not claim anything. I did rescue her. Your queen was going to die if I had not acted." A ripple of shocked whispers went through the court. Apparently humans were not supposed to speak so directly to royalty. But King Theron held up one of his hands, and the room fell silent. "You speak boldly for a primitive creature," the king said. "Tell me, human, what do you want in return for this supposed rescue?" Jake was getting tired of being called primitive. "I want to go home and get back to work. I do not want anything from you." This caused another stir in the court. King Theron's skin shifted to deeper gold colors that Jake guessed meant surprise or confusion. "Nothing. You risk your life to save a stranger, and you want nothing in return?" "That is correct," Jake said. "I saw someone in trouble and I helped. That is what people do where I come from." Queen Lyra spoke up for the first time since Jake had entered the throne room. "My husband, I have tried to explain this to you. This human acted without thought of reward or political gain. He simply did what he believed was right." King Theron's skin flashed with dark red patterns. Jake was learning that red usually meant anger. "And you find this admirable, my wife? This thoughtless action without consideration of consequences? I find it refreshing," Lyra replied, her own skin glowing with defiant gold. "When was the last time anyone in this court acted without first calculating the political advantages?" The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Jake realized he was witnessing a royal argument that had been building for some time. His rescue of the queen had just brought it to the surface. "Guards failed you," Jake said suddenly. Both royals turned to look at him. "Your queen said her guards fell back when the pirates attacked. They waited for reinforcements instead of protecting her." "I did not wait. I acted." King Theron's forearms moved in agitated gestures. Our guards follow proper protocol. They assess the situation and respond according to established procedures. And while they were following procedures, your wife almost died, Jake said bluntly. Sometimes proper protocol gets people killed. The court erupted in angry voices. Several aliens stepped forward, as if they wanted to attack Jake for his words. But King Theron raised his hand again and everyone froze. You dare to criticize our military methods? The king asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I am not criticizing anything, Jake replied. I am just saying that sometimes you have to act fast. Sometimes there is not time to follow procedures and wait for permission. Queen Lyra stood up from her throne. He is right, my husband. How many times have our people died while commanders debated the perfect response? How many colonies have fallen while we calculated the minimal acceptable losses? Lyra, King Theron said warningly, you go too far. Do I? The queen asked. This human saved my life with a single ship and no plan beyond helping someone in need. Our entire rescue fleet took 3 days to organize and still arrived too late. To help. Jake could see that this argument was about more than just his rescue of the queen. These two had fundamental disagreements about how their people should act in crisis situations. Jake's simple act of helping someone in trouble had become a symbol of everything Queen Lyra wanted to change about her society. A new voice interrupted the royal argument. Your Majesties, General Vex said as he entered the throne room, we have received urgent communications from the outer colonies. There has been another pirate attack. King Theron's skin went pale. Which colony? New Christia, Your Majesty. The pirates hit the orbital stations an hour ago. They are demanding tribute or they will attack the planet itself. Jake watched as the royal court immediately began debating response options. Some aliens wanted to send the full fleet. Others argued for negotiation. Still others suggested waiting to see if the pirates were bluffing. The debate grew more heated by the minute, with different factions arguing for different approaches. How long will this take? Jake asked. General Vex looked surprised that the human had spoken. We must consider all options carefully. Perhaps 6 to 8 hours to reach a consensus. 8 hours? Jake could not believe what he was hearing. People are going to die while you spend 8 hours talking about what to do. We do not act rashly, King Theron said firmly. We plan our responses carefully to minimize casualties and maximize effectiveness. Jake shook his head. By the time you finish planning, there might not be anyone left to save. Queen Lyra was watching Jake with intense interest. What would you do, human, if it were your people under attack? Jake thought about it for maybe 10 seconds. I would go there and stop the pirates, right now, before they could hurt anyone else. With what plan? King Theron demanded. What strategy would you use? I would figure that out when I got there, Jake said. The important thing is to act before more people die. The king's skin turned deep red. That is exactly the kind of primitive thinking that leads to disaster. You cannot simply charge into battle without proper preparation. And you cannot help anyone by debating forever while they are being killed. Jake shot back. Queen Lyra stepped between them before the argument could escalate further. My husband, perhaps we could learn something from this human's approach. Not everything requires perfect planning. Lyra, you cannot be serious, the king said. You want us to abandon centuries of military doctrine because this human suggests it. I want us to save lives, the queen replied, and right now while we stand here arguing, people are dying. Jake looked around the throne room at all the aliens in their perfect robes with their glowing skin and their advanced technology. They had everything they needed to help their people. Everything except the willingness to act quickly when action was needed. Your Majesty, Jake said to the king, you can keep me here as long as you want, but those colonists do not have time for you to decide what to do about me. They need help now. King Theron stared at Jake for a long moment, his skin cycling through several different colors. Finally, he turned to General Vex. Prepare a response fleet. We will depart in 4 hours. 4 hours, Your Majesty? General Vex looked confused. But we have not completed the tactical analysis. Completed on the way, the king said. Then he looked back at Jake. Human, you will remain here until we return. We will decide what to do with you then. As the aliens began filing out of the throne room to prepare for their mission, Jake wondered if 4 hours would be fast enough. He doubted it, but at least they were going to try to help their people. That was something. Jake spent 3 days in what the aliens called a guest room, but what felt like a prison. The room was beautiful, with crystal walls that showed images of alien worlds and furniture that seemed to grow out of the floor itself. But the door would not open for him, and guards stood outside at all times. The only visitor Jake had was Queen Lyra. She came every day to talk with him, always bringing news about the pirate situation. The news was not good. The alien fleet had taken 4 hours to prepare, then another 6 hours to travel to the attacked colony. By the time they arrived, the pirates had already looted the orbital stations and killed hundreds of people. The pirates escaped before our ships could engage them, Lyra told Jake on the 3rd day. Her skin was dim with colors that Jake now knew meant sadness and frustration. They jumped to hyperspace just as our fleet arrived. Jake felt sick to his stomach. All those people died while your husband was planning the perfect response. Yes, Lyra said quietly. And now the pirates have attacked another colony. They are using the same tactics, hitting fast and moving before we can respond. Jake stood up and walked to the crystal wall that showed a view of space. Somewhere out there, more people were dying while the aliens debated what to do about it. How long is your husband planning to take this time? The military council is meeting now, Lyra said. They estimate it will take 12 hours to plan a proper response. 12 hours, Jake repeated. He turned back to the Queen. Your Majesty, no disrespect, but your people are going to lose this war if they keep fighting it like this. Lyra's skin flashed with frustrated gold patterns. I know. I have tried to tell my husband that we need to change our approach, but he insists on following proper military doctrine. Jake heard something in the Queen's voice that made him look at her more carefully. You have an idea, don't you? Lyra was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. There is a way to reach the attacked colony quickly, but it would require using your ship. My ship? Jake was confused. The Lucky Strike is still in your docking bay, but it is not fast enough to outrun your warships. Speed is not the issue, Lyra explained. Your ship is small enough to use the emergency hyperspace lanes. Our big warships cannot fit through them, but your salvage vessel could. Jake began to understand. You want me to go after the pirates? I want us to go after the pirates, Lyra corrected. I know the emergency routes, and you know how to fight without perfect plans. Jake stared at the alien queen. Your Majesty, are you suggesting that we steal my ship and go fight space pirates without telling your husband? I am suggesting that we save lives while my husband debates the perfect strategy, Lyra said firmly. The pirates are attacking the mining station at Kepler 7. If we leave now, we can get there before they finish looting and killing. Jake thought about it for about 5 seconds. How do we get past the guards? Lyra smiled, and her skin glowed, with bright gold patterns. Leave that to me. 20 minutes later, Jake was following Queen Lyra through service corridors that the royal guards apparently did not know existed. The queen moved with surprising skill for someone who lived in a palace. She knew exactly where to go and how to avoid the patrol routes. How do you know about these passages? Jake asked as they crawled through a maintenance tunnel. I was not always a queen, Lyra replied. Before I married Theron, I was a scout pilot. I know every ship in the fleet better than the engineers. Who built them? They reached Jake's ship without being detected. The Lucky Strike looked even more beaten up than usual sitting in the pristine alien docking bay, but Jake was happy to see her. His ship might not be pretty, but she was reliable. Jake ran through the startup sequence while Lyra sealed the airlocks. The ship's engines came online with their familiar rumble, and Jake felt some of his confidence return. He might not understand alien politics, but he knew how to fly. Ready? Jake asked. Ready, Lyra replied, strapping herself into the co-pilot, seat that Jake had never expected to share with alien royalty. Jake fired up the engines and shot out of the docking bay before anyone could stop them. Behind them, he could see the massive alien warships beginning to move, but they were too slow to catch a small, fast ship that was already jumping to hyperspace. The emergency hyperspace lanes were like nothing Jake had ever experienced. Instead of the smooth travel of normal hyperspace, this felt like riding a rocket through a tornado. The Lucky Strike shook and rattled as they raced through passages that were barely wide enough for the ship. "How long until we reach Kepler 7? Jake asked, fighting to keep the ship steady. 40 minutes, Lyra replied. The pirates will not expect anyone to arrive this quickly. Jake hoped the Queen was right. He was betting his life and hers on the chance that they could surprise the pirates before anyone else died. They dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler 7 and immediately saw the pirate ships attacking the mining station. There were 5 of them, smaller than alien warships but bigger and better armed than Jake's salvage vessel. Under normal circumstances, Jake would have run away from this fight. But these were not normal circumstances. Jake looked at the scanner readings and saw that the pirates were in the middle of boarding the station. That meant there were still people alive in there who needed help. "What is your plan?" Lyra asked. Jake strapped himself in tighter and pushed the engines to full power. "Plan is to ram the biggest pirate ship and hope we survive long enough to help the miners." "That is not a plan," Lyra protested. "That is suicide." "Sometimes they are the same thing," Jake said and dove straight at the pirate fleet. The pirates were so surprised by the sudden attack that they did not even fire back at first. Jake's ship slammed into the lead pirate vessel using his reinforced mining equipment to tear through their hull. The pirate ship spun away, leaking atmosphere and clearly out of the fight. But now the other pirates were responding. Energy beams flashed past Jake's ship as he twisted and turned between the mining station support structures. The Lucky Strike was not built for dogfighting, but Jake had been dodging asteroids and pirates for years. He knew how to make a small ship dance. "There," Lyra pointed at one of the pirate ships. "They are trying to flee with the stolen cargo." Jake swung his ship around and activated his mining charges. The explosives were meant for breaking up asteroids, but they worked just as well on pirate ships. The fleeing vessel disappeared in a ball of fire and debris. The remaining pirates decided they had had enough. They broke off their attack on the mining station and fled into hyperspace, leaving behind the miners they had been trying to capture. Jake sat back in his pilot's chair, breathing hard. The entire fight had lasted maybe 10 minutes. 10 minutes. To save lives that would have been lost if they had waited for the perfect military response. Lyra was staring at the tactical display, her skin cycling through patterns of amazement and respect. "You did it," she said softly. "You saved them." "We did it," Jake corrected. "You got us here in time." Jake's radio crackled with transmission from the mining station. "Unknown vessel. This is Station Commander Lewis. Thank you for your assistance. We thought we were going to die today." "You are welcome, Commander," Jake replied. "Just doing what needed to be done." As they prepared to return to the alien fleet, Lyra turned to Jake with an expression he had never seen before. "My people have much to learn from yours," she said. "Perhaps it is time we stopped thinking of humans as primitive." Jake smiled. "Maybe it is time your people learned that sometimes the most advanced thing you can do is to act like a savage." When they returned to the flagship, King Theron was waiting for them. The alien ruler's skin was dark with anger, but there was something else there too. Something that might have been respect. "You disobeyed direct orders," the king said to his wife. "I saved lives while you debated strategy," Lyra replied calmly. King Theron looked at Jake for a long moment. "And you, human? You risked everything to help people you had never met." "Someone had to," Jake said simply. The king's skin slowly shifted from angry red to thoughtful silver. "Perhaps," he said quietly. "There is wisdom in acting without perfect plans." Jake nodded. "Sometimes, Your Majesty, the most civilized thing you can do is to be a little bit savage." From that day forward, the Zephyrian Empire began to change. They learned that sometimes quick action was better than perfect planning. They learned that helping others without expecting reward was not primitive, but the highest form of civilization. And Jake Miller, the savage human who had rescued a queen, became the first human ambassador to an alien empire. He never did get back to his simple life of salvage work, but he found something better. He found a purpose that was bigger than himself. The galaxy was a better place because one human had decided to help a stranger in need. Sometimes that was all it took to change everything.